Did you know the Holy Scripture reveals hidden clues about prosperity? Surprisingly, it's not about horoscopes or astral signs. These clues are intrinsically linked to your way of thinking, acting, and reacting regarding finances. It's as if the Bible contains a guide to wealth, yet most people ignore it. Imagine how your life would change if you could identify these signs in yourself. The Bible states that the diligent worker will stand before kings. This passage profoundly impacted me, unveiling a fundamental secret about wealth, dedication. Many believe that fortune arises from luck, privileged connections, or speculative gains. But the truth is that prosperity follows a pattern. This pattern begins with something seemingly simple, yet few maintain it consistently. Daily consistency in executing essential tasks. Think for a moment. How many projects did you start with enthusiasm and abandon after a few weeks? How many times did you promise to save, started well, but within a few months were spending uncontrollably? This happens to most people because the human mind seeks shortcuts. It prefers immediate pleasure to continuous effort. But that's precisely where those who merely dream and those who transform their reality differ. I vividly remember when I worked for the Toronto Fire Department. My salary was fixed, predictable, and I felt my life limited. There were no prospects for growth, only routine. One day after reading Think and Grow Rich, I realized that I lacked not intelligence or luck, but perseverance. I decided to start a cleaning business, even without administrative experience or specific training. It was the discipline of waking up early, visiting clients, cleaning each place as if it were the most important that allowed me to reach over $100,000 in the first year. It wasn't magic, nor exceptional talent, it was dedication. And I ask, could a lack of perseverance be preventing you from changing your life? How many times have you given up because you didn't see immediate results? This happens because people want to harvest on the same day they plant. Nature doesn't work that way. The Bible doesn't say that the diligent will stand before kings the next day, but describes a process. A study from Duke University indicates that more than 40% of our daily actions are automatic habits. In other words, perseverance is not just momentary willpower, but the creation of patterns that repeat until they become part of your essence. Imagine if 40% of your daily actions were aligned with prosperity. The result would be inevitable. Think of people we admire. Steve Jobs, for example, didn't create Apple overnight. It was years of perseverance in innovation, testing, errors and restarts. If he had given up on the first attempts, there would be no iPhones today. Perseverance is the invisible element behind every visible success. I'm not just talking about perseverance at work, but also in your way of thinking, dealing with your emotions, and organizing your finances. If today you spend more than you earn, it's not a lack of opportunities, but a lack of financial discipline. If you don't have time for anything, it's probably a lack of organization to set priorities. I want to propose something. In the next 21 days, choose just one area of your life where you fail due to a lack of consistency. It could be waking up earlier, writing down your expenses, dedicating 30 minutes daily to reading to expand your knowledge. Choose one thing and be disciplined without fail. You will realize that when perseverance is established in one area, it begins to influence others. You might think, I've tried and it didn't work. I've also tried and failed many times. The difference is that when I decided not to give up, perseverance became part of my character, and character is something non-negotiable. Perseverance is the first biblical sign of wealth because it prepares you for opportunities. It's not about waiting for everything to be perfect to act, but acting consistently so that at harvest time you are ready to receive. Because in the end, true wealth is not in how much you earn, but in how much you maintain and multiply. The Bible teaches that where there is no vision, the people perish. And this happens to most people. They live without focus, without direction, only reacting to circumstances, like leaves carried by the wind. They know what they don't want, what bothers them, but they can't clearly define what they want to build. Without a clear vision, the mind doesn't find motivation, as it only works towards defined goals. I realized this painfully at the beginning of my adult life. I dropped out of school early, had no plans, and accepted any job. Gas stations, factories, hard labor. I just went with the flow, without any future prospects. Until I read Think and Grow Rich, it was as if someone turned on a light in a room I didn't even know was dark. I finally understood that I needed to have a vision greater than immediate reality. It didn't matter where I was, but where I could get to. Vision is not a simple wish, but a clear and constant mental image of what you want to live. Walt Disney is an example of this. He was fired from a newspaper for lack of creativity, went bankrupt several times before success. But there was something in him that no one could erase: the vision. He already saw parks, characters, and stories that the world had not yet imagined. Therefore, even in the face of failures, he persisted. The vision sustained him until fulfillment. In practice, how does this apply to your life? It means deciding how you want to live in 5 or 10 years and starting to behave mentally as if it were already real. Science confirms this power. Neuroscience research shows that by repeatedly visualizing a situation, the brain activates the same areas as if it were happening. High-level athletes use visualization before competitions. The brain doesn't clearly distinguish the real from the vividly imagined. By creating a clear vision and sustaining it daily, you train your brain to believe it's possible and to find ways to achieve it. Notice, we've all used vision, but negatively. Have you ever imagined a tragedy before going to sleep? Created scenarios of failure before even trying? That's a distorted vision. And what happens? It paralyzes, doesn't act, and confirms your fears. If negative vision has the power to block your life, imagine what positive vision can do, fueled by faith and perseverance. There was a time when I looked at my bank account and saw only red numbers. It was humiliating, frustrating, and everything around me confirmed the scarcity. But internally, I decided to create a different vision. I saw myself lecturing to crowds, writing books, impacting people. This image seemed absurd in the face of my reality, but it gave me the energy to continue when everything seemed impossible. Today, I realize that it was this vision that kept me firm until reality aligned with what had already formed in my mind. If you feel stagnant, do this challenge. For the next 7 days before any morning activity, write in detail what your life will be like in 5 years. Write as if it has already happened. Where you live, what your house is like, your work, your account balance, how you feel when you wake up. The more specific, the more powerful the impact. It's not fantasy, it's mental programming. It's like drawing the map that your brain will use to find roots. Vision is the second biblical sign of wealth because it creates a magnetic force. People without vision lose energy along the way, while people with vision attract resources, ideas, and opportunities that seem to appear out of nowhere. It's not luck, but the alignment between mind, emotion, and action. And when this happens, the impossible begins to move in your direction. The Bible teaches that there are those who give liberally and yet grow richer and richer. This seems the opposite of what most people believe. From an early age, we learn to hold on to what we have, to protect every penny, as if wealth came from accumulating and never letting go. But the scriptures reveal a different principle. Generosity creates movement, and movement generates abundance. Money that is stagnant is like stagnant water. It rots. Money that flows, that circulates, that is set in motion by generosity, always returns multiplied. I remember a time when I had practically nothing. I was in debt, full of doubts about how I would survive the next month. And yet, something impelled me to give. It didn't make sense. How could I donate when I myself didn't have enough? But it was precisely during that time that I learned that generosity is not about quantity, but about attitude. I started by donating small amounts, helping when I could, even if it was something almost symbolic. I realized that every time I gave, an unexpected opportunity arose, a new idea, a client who appeared, a connection that didn't exist before. It was as if I had opened a jammed faucet. Generosity is not limited to money. It can be your time, your attention, your knowledge. How many times has someone needed a word of encouragement and you remained silent because you were too busy with your problems? The curious thing is that when you decide to leave yourself and offer something to another, your own life begins to gain new meaning. Research from Harvard University shows that generous people report greater happiness, well-being, and even physical health. It's as if the act of giving programs your body and mind to live in abundance. The opposite is also true. How many stories have you heard of people who achieved a lot but lost everything because they lived only for themselves? The Bible shows this repeatedly. Accumulating without sharing is building on unstable ground. That's why so many materially wealthy people live in constant fear of loss. They haven't grasped that true wealth isn't about what you hold on to, but what you circulate. I've learned that generosity creates an invisible kind of confidence. When you give, even when you're feeling scarce, you're telling the universe and yourself, I trust there's more. I don't depend solely on what I have now. This attitude breaks the fear of lack, the very fear that traps millions in a life of scarcity. Consider figures like Oprah Winfrey. Her generosity in sharing knowledge, opportunities, and resources has made her not only one of the wealthiest women in the world, but also one of the most influential and admired. Her wealth didn't grow despite her generosity, but because of it. Generosity creates impact, and impact attracts prosperity. Now, if you want to put this into practice, try something simple. Choose a percentage, even 1% of what comes in, and put it into motion. Donate to someone, invest in a cause, offer help without expecting immediate returns. Do this consistently and observe what happens. Don't expect immediate results, but notice how your mind opens to possibilities you couldn't see before. Generosity is the third biblical sign of wealth because it destroys the illusion of scarcity. It proves you already live in abundance, even when it seems you have little. And when you act from that awareness, life finds surprising ways to confirm your trust. The flow never runs dry for those who learn to circulate what they receive. The Bible urges us to be strong and courageous because without courage, every other virtue loses its power. You can have perseverance, vision, and even wisdom, but without the courage to act, everything dies within you. Fear is the greatest thief of dreams. How many times have you known exactly what you needed to do, but didn't do it for fear of losing, making a mistake, or being judged? Fear paralyzes more people than a lack of resources. I know the weight of this because I too was once trapped by fear. When I was with the Toronto Fire Department, I had a secure job. It wasn't the best, but it was stable. Leaving seemed crazy. Fear whispered, what if it doesn't work out? What if you lose what little you have? But there was a louder voice that said, if you stay, you'll never know who you could become. That's when I decided to leave and start my first company, even without knowing anything about business. And it was the courage to take that step that changed everything. If I had waited until I felt ready, I'd still be putting out fires and dreaming of a life I never would have had. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means moving forward despite it. Michael Jordan, considered the greatest basketball player of all time, missed more than 9,000 shots and lost almost 300 games. But instead of letting the fear of failure dominate him, He used each miss as training for the next success. What made him an icon wasn't perfection, but the courage to keep going even when he failed repeatedly. Fear is natural, but it cannot dictate the course of your life. Psychological studies show that more than 80% of the things people fear never happen. This means that most fears are mental constructs, illusions created by the mind to protect you. But that protection also imprisons you. Fear prevents you from investing, changing careers, ending a bad relationship, saying yes to an opportunity. It creates a life that's safe but dull. I remember a significant episode. Early on, when I was still structuring my cleaning business, I got the chance to take on a large contract. It was so far outside my reality that I almost refused. My first reaction was fear. What if I can't deliver? What if I fail? But in that moment, I told myself, accept it and then figure out how to do it. I closed the deal, and that's what multiplied my company in a short time. If I had let fear decide, I would never have taken that leap. Courage will always demand a risk, and that's what's scary. But here's a secret. The risk of acting is almost always less than the risk of not acting. The risk of not acting is spending years in the same situation, without growth, without fulfillment, without discovering what you're capable of. The risk of acting is perhaps failing, but with the chance to learn and reinvent yourself. I want to propose a practical exercise. Think of something you've been putting off out of fear. It could be an important conversation, a financial decision, a personal project. Write down on paper the worst thing that could happen if you do it. Then write down the best thing that could happen if it goes well. When you put this before you, you realize that the worst is rarely as devastating as it seems, but the best can completely transform your life. Courage is the fourth biblical sign of wealth, because it opens doors that fear closes, and the truth is, opportunities never come wrapped in security. They always arrive disguised as risk, and only the courageous are able to see that behind the fear, there's a new reality waiting to be conquered. The Bible says that blessed is the man who finds wisdom and understanding. There's a profound reason for this. Money without wisdom becomes a burden, not a blessing. How many stories have you heard of people who made a lot of money quickly and then lost it all? This happens because material wealth without mental and emotional preparation becomes unsustainable. It's like putting new wine into old wineskins. It can't withstand the pressure. I've seen this firsthand throughout my life. People who have acquired sudden fortunes, like lottery winners, often end up in a worse situation than they were before. Studies show that most winners of large prizes lose everything in less than 5 years. This doesn't happen for lack of money, but for lack of wisdom in how to manage, invest, and multiply it. It's as if the money only amplified what was already inside them: disorganization, insecurity, and lack of vision. Mike Tyson is a striking example. He earned hundreds of millions of dollars during his career, but because he didn't apply financial wisdom, he ended up losing almost everything. Talent and physical strength took him to the top, but a lack of understanding brought him down. This is a reminder that true security lies not in what you possess, but in what you know how to do with what you possess. I learned this firsthand. When I started my first cleaning company, the money started coming in a way I had never experienced. For someone who came from manual labor and without an education, it was almost unbelievable. And precisely because of that, at times, I found myself tempted to spend recklessly, as if that source would never run dry. I had to seek guidance, study, and learn how to handle finances so as not to waste what I had achieved. It was in this process that I realized wisdom doesn't come automatically with money, but without wisdom, money always goes away. And here's something many don't realize. Wisdom isn't just theoretical knowledge. It's no use reading books and not applying what you learn. Wisdom is the fusion of knowledge and action. It's when you learn something and immediately put it into practice. That's why the Bible values understanding so much, because understanding is knowledge applied to real life. Science also confirms this importance. Research from Stanford University shows that people who learn to delay immediate gratification, choosing to wait for greater benefits in the future, are more financially and professionally successful throughout their lives. This is a clear sign of wisdom. Not spending everything now, but understanding that investing and building in the present generates abundance in the future. I want you to reflect on something. How much time do you dedicate today to acquiring wisdom about money, about personal development, about your field of work? And how much time do you dedicate to consuming content that adds nothing? Many people spend hours scrolling through their phones, but say they don't have time to study or improve themselves. This is a lack of priority. If you want to grow, you need to choose what nourishes your mind with wisdom, not just with distraction. Wisdom also means choosing well the people you listen to. Throughout my journey, I sought the guidance of mentors who had already achieved the success I aspired to, a crucial decision that saved me time and countless mistakes. Experienced helps showed me shorter and more efficient paths, avoiding years of fruitless attempts. I want to share a transformative practice. Over the next 30 days, choose a topic vital to your financial health and delve into it. Whether it's investment, time management, or self-confidence, study, apply, and observe the results. Cultivating the relentless pursuit of knowledge generates growth in all areas of life. This is the fifth biblical lesson on prosperity, because wisdom is the unshakable foundation. Without it, any endeavor will crumble. With it, even if everything seems insignificant now, you will have a solid base to support any level of fortune that comes your way. True wealth doesn't reside only in accumulation, but in the ability to multiply, preserve, and intelligently enjoy what you achieve. The scriptures teach that giving is more rewarding than receiving, a principle that reveals a powerful secret about prosperity. Generosity is not just an act of kindness or a religious precept, but a spiritual and practical law that opens doors, generates connections, and produces benefits beyond the act of giving. Sharing, however small the contribution, conveys to the universe and to yourself the message, "I have enough, I trust in continuous abundance." This trust triggers an inexhaustible cycle of plenty. Many believe giving means losing, but the opposite is true. Giving plants seeds that yield an abundant harvest in due time. This principle is echoed in scripture and countless life stories. Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest men of his era, profoundly understood this. He donated over 90% of his immense fortune to social causes, building schools, libraries, and foundations. Paradoxically, the more he gave, the more prosperous he became. He recognized that wealth isn't just about accumulation, but about circulation. I've personally witnessed generosity unlock seemingly insurmountable doors. During times of scarcity, helping others, supporting a project, or contributing to a cause led to unexpected opportunities. Influential people crossed my path, businesses flourished, contracts multiplied. I learned firsthand that generosity transcends charity. It's a life strategy. Science corroborates this. Psychological studies show generous individuals tend to be happier, more socially integrated, and even physically healthier. The act of giving releases dopamine and oxytocin, hormones that promote well-being and emotional connection. In short, giving not only helps others, but strengthens you internally, elevates your energy, and creates a field of positive attraction around you. Crucially, generosity isn't limited to money. You can be generous with your time, knowledge, and attention. A sincere piece of advice, a kind gesture, or words of encouragement often outweigh any financial contribution. However, regarding material prosperity, money needs to circulate. Hoarding it out of fear and attachment creates stagnation. Moving it wisely, including through giving, generates flow and expansion. I visualize generosity as a watercourse. A spring that only receives and never flows becomes stagnant, unproductive and lifeless. But with movement, the water remains clear, refreshing and abundant. So it is with prosperity. The more you share, the more space you create for new blessings. It's essential to remember that true generosity isn't measured by the amount, but by the intention and the heart. Jesus observed the offering of the poor widow, who gave only 2 small coins and said she had given more than all because she gave with sincerity and detachment. This teaches us that generosity doesn't depend on how much we possess, but on our willingness to share what we have. By adopting this principle as a lifestyle, you perceive wealth differently. You understand that wealth isn't an end, but a means to transform, bless, and leave a legacy. By doing so, you integrate into an infinite cycle of growth, where the more you give, the more you receive. Not just materially, but in peace, healthy relationships, and purpose. This is the 6th biblical lesson on prosperity. Generosity demonstrates that you are not a slave to money, but that you master and direct it for good. This attitude attracts even more abundance, for the universe and God entrust more resources to those who know how to multiply not only for themselves, but for the good of many.